It is indeed a privilege for me to offer you some glimpses of the rich cultural heritage of Karnataka in the field of architecture and art. Given the short time frame, I thought I'll focus attention on the most important dynasty which really contributed and enriched the temple architecture in Karnataka. The Badami Chalukyas or early Chalukyas ruled the undivided Karnataka between 6th and 8th century. During this period of time, they engaged in many a battle. But in spite of that, they had an abiding interest in temple architecture. And they experimented with different styles of building temples. They started building temple in their capital, Badami, which was also known as Vatapi. They started carving into massive sandstone rocks, which are found in abundance in this region. And thus began their tryst with the cave temples in South India. Let us now have a look at the caves of Badami. As you enter the first cave in Badami, on your right, you will notice this resplendent dancing Nataraja. This is deemed to be one of the earliest depictions of Nataraja in Indian subcontinent. Here you see him in the form depicting various mudras from Natya Shastra of Bharata Muni. The Nataraja has 18 arms. The arms on the right side are holding different kinds of weapons, whereas the arms on the left side are offering us various mudras. The posture of Nataraja and the delicate lines with which these craftsmen have sculpted this extraordinary sculpture is truly wonderful. The creative energy of the dance is transparent in this depiction. What we will also notice is, in contrast to the other depictions of Nataraja, Apasmara Murti is not found beneath his feet. Here, you will find Nandi on your left. On your right, you will find Ganesha, and then a person who's playing the drums and enjoying the dance of Shiva. As after really partaking the beauty of this depiction of Nataraja, let us step in to Cave 1. In Cave 1, you will see perhaps the earliest depiction of Mahishasuramardini. Here, Mahishasuramardini has 4 hands. In one of the hands, she is holding the trident, and she is piercing the head of the Asura, Mahishasura, with it, and you can clearly see the spear passing through the head of the demon. While doing this act, she ensures that the demon doesn't slip away by holding its tail firmly in the lower left hand. She is not riding a lion or a tiger, which was the depiction much later in Indian iconography. As you venture further in Cave 1, you will see this wonderful depiction of Ganesha sitting. Many of you would have heard that in Carnatic music concerts, often the first kriti is Vathapi Ganapatim by Muthuswami Dikshagar in Raga Hindolam. Perhaps the inspiration for that creation came from this particular depiction of Ganesha in Vathapi. Here you will find him seated in a very relaxed position, wearing a very ornamented necklace around his neck, and both his arms are also, he's also wearing some bangles in his arms, and on the left side, he's holding a Modaka Patra. One thing that is noticeable in the caves of Badami is the extraordinary craftsmanship of the very skilled sculptors. None of these stones are exported from anywhere else. These pillars are not carved from outside and then fixed inside. These pillars have been carved into the rocks from above downwards. And you can see that each pillar is different from one another. And the workmanship in each of these pillars is quite extraordinary. On the wall, you will see a depiction of Ardhanarishwara. On his side, there is Parvati. There is also Nandi by his side. But on the top left-hand corner, you will notice an extraordinary figure who is just skin and bones. This person is Bringi. Bringi was an ardent devotee of Shiva, and he would circumambulate Shiva and offer pradakshina to Shiva. But for some reason, he was not very fond of Parvati and refused to offer circumambulation and prayer to her. So one day, to teach him a lesson, Parvati sat on the left leg of Shiva so that he is compelled to circumambulate both of them. You will be surprised that Bringi took the form of a bee and flew in between Shiva and Parvati. Noticing this, Shiva took the form of Ardhanarishwara so that when Bringi circumambulates him, there is Parvati within himself. But this entire episode did not favor much with Parvati. She cursed Bringi so that he loses all his muscles and essentials in his body, and he was reduced to skin and bones. In spite of that, Bringi continued to be a very devoted saint for Lord Shiva. If you venture further into cave 2 and cave 3, you will find a seated Vishnu. Often one has a glimpse of Vishnu in Seshasayana reclining on the snake. Here you will find him sitting on the snake with elaborate ornamentation. To the right, you will find Ashtabhuja Vishnu, Vishnu with 8 arms. Again, very intricately carved with all ornamentation on his body, very clearly sculpted. I wonder whether you have seen another Ashtabhuja Vishnu. That Ashtabhuja Vishnu is this particular one. And the similarity between both of them is extremely striking, isn't it? This, in fact, is from Angkor Wat. If you go further and explore the caves, you will find this massive depiction of Trivikrama. Trivikrama was measuring with three steps the land. And what you notice in this depiction of Trivikrama, to the left, you find a person holding his left leg so that he doesn't proceed further. He is Namuchi, the son of Bali, who's preventing him from doing this task. On the bottom, you will find Shukracharya offering dana. And on the top, on the right side, you will find a depiction of Garuda with a noose in his hand so that he can trap the person who prevents Trivikrama from doing his act. The last cave in Badami is a Jain cave, which is replete from beautiful depiction of various Jain deities. This again is a very intricate depiction of Bahubali. Once you step out of the caves and look at the caves, from outside, they look not very significant. They look bare. But once you step into a whole new world of experience in which each and every wall, every pillar is exquisitely carved. It is not just that. Even the pedestal at the entry of the cave is sculpted in detail with Sivaganas. And if you notice the Sivaganas, which I have appended below, you notice the first Shivagana is running, the second one is perhaps walking fast, the third one is not so well defined. But look at the fifth Shivagana. He is holding his right hand to the ear, a pose that we very often see in Carnatic singers when they are in concert. When they do the alapana, invariably they hold the right hand close to the ear. So, having had a brief but good look at the resplendent cave temple of Badami, let us go further and explore Aihole. Aihole is considered to be the temple city. It was a cradle of temple architecture because different forms of temple architecture were experimented in this particular place. At one time, there was a group of over 100 temples in this place. Let us have a look at the Ravanapadi temple in Aihole. In Ravanapadi temple, the sculptors crafted a prototype of a regular temple. Here you find a large plain field with a Nandi facing the temple. And as you go up the steps, you will find two subsidiary shrines on either side. And there are Dwarapalakas crafted onto the rocks. Once you enter the cave, you will notice that is perhaps the biggest cave ever in this particular region, bigger than Badami. There are at least about four to five panels of sculptures within this cave. What I would draw attention to is this depiction of dancing Nataraja. Here you will find that he has 10 arms, and Ganesha is towards his right and Subramanya is towards his left. What is important is, in this depiction of dancing Nataraja, he is accompanied by Saptamatrikas. Here, I have shown you the picture of two of the Saptamatrikas. Let us move further and visit the Durga temple, which is often the first temple that a visitor glances upon. Actually, the name Durga is a misnomer because the temple is not dedicated to Durga, but originally the deity was Surya. Why it was called as the Durga temple? There are various explanations. One of the explanations is that it formed a part of a fort in earlier time. This has a very distinctive architectural style, which is known as Gajaprastha style. Gajaprastha meaning it depicts and mimics the backside of an elephant. Some people also feel that this structure is the one that inspired the architecture of the Indian Parliament. Once you step in to this beautiful structure, the first sculpture that draws your attention is this amazing depiction of Mahishasuramardini. You will notice that this depiction of Mahishasuramardini is much more aesthetically refined than the one which we saw in the first cave of Badami. There is dynamism in depiction, and there is striking elegance. The Mahishasuramardini is portrayed in a very slender form. But what you notice is the expression on her face. Extreme degree of calmness, and she exudes tranquility. You also notice that as she is piercing the demon Mahishasura, the bull is craning its neck upwards and looking at her face as if in bewilderment. For the first time in the depiction of Mahishasuramardini, you will also see a lion by the side. This depiction of Mahishasuramardini, in terms of the dynamism and the gracefulness, is followed by another sculpture in the same present. Here you see the depiction of Shiva in Tribhanga pose. He is hugging a Nandi with his left arm, and look at all the ornamentation on his body, including the crown. Each one of them with the finest of details that you can ever set your eyes on. In the circumambulatory passage, there are also depictions of Vishnu as well as Shiva. You can see Shiva on the left side, and you can see Vishnu again on the right side. Here, you will see Vishnu in the usual standing position, in contrast to the seated Vishnu in Badami. As I mentioned, at one time, Badami had more than 100 temples. Unfortunately, many of the temples were not taken well care of during the years, till the Archaeological Society of India took over. In fact, in many of the temples, people were residing, people were living. The Dwarapalikas, which you see on either side, is actually from a temple called Huchamalaya. Why is it called Huchamalaya? Because the family of Huchamalaya was living in this temple way back. In the center panel, you will see a couple, often referred to as amorous couple. Even though vagaries of time have taken a toll on the sculpture, the expression and the delicacy with which they have been crafted has withstood the travails of time. Let us now move on to Pattadakkal. Pattadakkal is the place where the Badami kings were crowned. Pattadakkal is currently the UNESCO World Heritage Center. Why was it chosen as a place where the kings were crowned? And why were all these temples, over 10 of them, were built on this? These temples were built on the banks of the river Malaprabha, at the site where Malaprabha takes a northward twist or turn. It is often considered that the site where a river takes a northward turn is extremely sacred for building a temple. So, among the 10 temples in Pattadakkal, if you walk in, you will notice the first simple structure, which is Jambulingeshwara temple. This temple is built in the Vesara style. Vesara style is the amalgamation of the Nagara, or the North Indian way of temple building, and the Dravidian way of temple structure. If you look carefully, you will find a small panel on the tower of this temple. Let us have a closer look at it. Here you find a dancing form of Shiva. Again, even though small in size, the dynamism in his dance is so palpable. By his side is Parvati with a headgear, who is looking very fondly at him, admiring the dance performance. On the bottom, on both the sides, you will find yakshas. These two yakshas are Asvatara and Kambala. And they were extremely good singers. And Shiva was very fond of their singing. So he transformed them into serpents and started wearing them over the years so that he can hear their songs all the times. On top, on either side, you will find Devaganas who are watching the entire performance. The most beautiful temple in entire Pattadakkal territory is the Virupaksha temple. The outside of Virupaksha temple, you will find panels depicting various forms of Shiva. Among the panels, the most beautiful one, even though it is a bit disfigured because of travails of time, is this depiction of dancing Shiva. Now, you will find the Apasmara Murti on the ground on which Shiva is dancing. Notice the staff which he is holding on his left hand. On top of it is a small, beautifully sculpted Nandi. Again, notice the ornamentation and also the divine expression in his face. On both sides of this amazingly beautiful sculpture of dancing Shiva, you will find other depictions of Shiva on both the sides. And both of them are relief sculptures. The relief sculptures give you almost a 3D effect, as if they are coming out alive from the panels. In the middle, you will find a depiction of Lingodbhava. He is surrounded by elaborate ornamentation on top, with Devaganas and Parvati in center. On to your left, you will find a fantastic depiction of Gaja Samhara Murti. Vishnu is carried by Garuda, in this particular famous epic of Gajasamhara. On the right side, you will find a very beautiful description of Bhikshadana Murti. Again, do not miss the blissful expression in his face. Even the folds of his dress are so intricately carved that you can make out each and every strand. Again, the ornamentation on his body is very beautifully carved. One of the most outstanding panels in Pattadakkal is this one of Ravana lifting Mount Kailash. Ravana lifted Mount Kailash because he wanted to take Mount Kailash along with Shiva and Parvati to his city so that he can worship them there. You can see in this portrayal that he is lifting Mount Kailash with 20 hands. But in the act of lifting this enormous mountain, he is putting his left leg firmly on the ground while bending his right leg to offer a balance and twisting his body so that he can lift the entire Mount Kailash with much ease. On top, you can find Shiva and Parvati. On either side, I have shown you depictions of the windows in Pattadakkal temple. Each of the windows, in addition to offering light inside, are also intricately carved, and each window is unlike the other. Let me spend a minute on this particular panel. The panel which you see on top is a very unusual one of depicting Mahishasura in the battle. Often Mahishasura is depicted alone or in terms of vanquishing the demon god. But here you will find her actually engaging in battle with the demon, Mahishasura. Look at the posture of Mahishasura Mardini as she is taking the arrow and attempting to strike at Mahishasura. She is riding a ferocious lion, and Mahishasura is already sensing defeat, and you can see by his posture that he is retreating from this scene. This panel is found in Mahishasura Mardini cave in Mahabalipuram, and it was crafted by the Pallavas. When I was looking at it, I was wondering as to what could have been the source of inspiration for this fantastic panel. The answer emerged when I looked at a small panel in the Mallikarjuna temple in Pattadakkal. In a dark corner in the interior of the temple, right above, there was this very small panel in which you find Mahishasura Mardini riding the lion and attacking the demon Mahishasura. If you look at this panel, you will notice that it has the same kind of elements and dynamism as that which was portrayed by the Pallavas. As I mentioned earlier, Pallavas and early Chalukyas went to war many a time. But in spite of their continuing engagement in battle, they ensured there was a rich cultural interchange between the communities of artisans. The rich interchange of the artisans and their inspiration that they drew from each other can be seen from this particular panel from Pattadakkal, which has inspired this amazing panel in Mahabalipuram. People who visit Badami, Aihole, and Pattarakal often miss Mahakuta. Mahakuta is perhaps the one of the oldest living temples still in worship in India. I would urge you to visit this place just for one reason. Visit this place to have a glimpse of this beautiful depiction of Ardhanarishwara. Ardhanarishwara has never been depicted in such graceful form ever in Indian architecture. So while you're visiting Badami or Aihole or Pattadakkal, take a small detour and visit this wonderful place, Mahakuta, and have a glimpse of Ardhanarishwara. This has been a very short journey, as I mentioned, because of the constraints of time, in which I have offered you some glimpses of the richness of early Chalukyas in their as manifested in their temple architecture. The initiation of early Chalukyas and the inspiration continued to flow in Karnataka over the years, and they were instrumental in terms of inspiring artisans and craftsmanship down the centuries. And you can see their inspiration in many other temples all over Karnataka. So while you had a glimpse of all these sculptures in these places, I would urge you to take some time and visit each one of them and partake their beauty. Let me conclude in the words of Kuvempu, Mahakavi Kuvempu, Rashtrakavi Kuvempu, who wrote, "Oh, the traveler, step in with prayers on your lips, hands folded in reverence. This is not just a temple of stone, but a wonder of art." Thank you.